Hey guys! So this week, BK and I are going to talk about some strategies for when things get out of their routine. When we're dealing with, we don't get to eat dinner at home, or if you've got a work event, a work party, there's a holiday, any kind of thing that's going to kind of mess up your normal routine. So we wanted to talk strategy with you guys.
Yes, because this is funny. We were like, okay, we're gonna get this rolling. We've got a goal, either losing weight or just eating right and whatnot. And then there's always something going on, be it the holidays or whatnot. And I think one of the biggest keys in being very consistent and seeing larger athletic goals become easier is that when we get into a routine, we're always doing things in a certain way, regardless of what's going on. And this eating thing is huge. And we'd love to hear your feedback on maybe if you guys have some strategies on what works for you, but we're going to try to give you some things that have worked for us and whatnot. So absolutely. Rachel, what do you do?
Well, I like to kind of break it down like before the event strategies, at the event strategies, and then of course just day-to-day strategies. So one of the biggest things that I find helpful for me and most people is filling up before the event, right? So that means doing some kind of really nutrient-dense smoothie, a large salad, maybe a really hearty soup, something that's gonna give you a lot of nutrition. It's gonna fill you up. I know that for so many people, this is like, well, duh. But maybe just knowing a little bit of the science will help. When our stomach's empty, we get that ghrelin, which always makes me think growling, ghrelin. We get that hormone going on. And so it stimulates our appetite, right? But as we're filling up our stomach, we're decreasing our ghrelin levels, which is causing our appetite to wane. So that's sort of when we show up, we're not ready to devour the whole table, because I have definitely done that a few times. Happened to you, right?
well, and that's just smart thinking, because that's, how you're recovering after you do something long or whatnot. So absolutely. You can make better decisions when you're not starving.
Yeah. And the thing is, it doesn't mean you don't get to eat any of the food there. It means you can be more selective.
Right. Absolutely. You're talking about smoothies and soups and nutrient-dense foods and stuff like that. Some of the things that I've done, I always have Kind bars or Lara bars, dried fruit or nuts in my car or at home. If you're traveling, either to somebody's house or whatnot. And you can do this on the down low. You can go up to your room in Aunt Susie's house so she doesn't think you're a weirdo.
And too late.
Right. Go up there, have a Kind bar, and fill the stomach. Or some things that I do, and you can experiment when you're at home, what works for you. I take Amy's burritos. They're in the healthier food section, in the frozen section. They're not 100% good, but you know what? They are probably about 75, 80% pretty good for you. They have gluten-free options and whatnot. I've been known to, like, when I went to Cozumel to do a half Ironman, I bought a frozen freezer bag and took, I think, 15 Amy's burritos with me, and they got to Cozumel still cold. And I lived on those. So, it's easy to do that. And then the other thing is, gas stations now, good gas stations have those protein packs. There's really not a lot of excuses to not eat good food.
I mean, you just nailed it. If you are willing to do a little bit of planning, I mean, obviously you had to do some, some thinking, creative thinking before you hopped on the plane, but right. A little bit of planning really took you a long way. So for sure.
Well, and if you're traveling and you're going to a race, this is good race strategy. Or, you're going on the holidays and you have to do your long run, at Aunt Susie's house.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to eat Aunt Susie's breakfast.
No. And, and that's something to right. And we want to remember that, because if we're eating foods that aren't nutrient dense, we're not getting those nutrients in our bloodstream, right? So you might be getting plenty of glucose. I don't know. You might not be getting the healthy fats or the amino acids or, vitamins, minerals, enzymes. And so then you're going to eat, and then you're going to want to keep eating. Things go south quickly that way. So this is why your strategizing is so important.
The other thing that I do is the motivation piece. I like Post-it notes. I have a lot of Post-it notes. If I see a cute one, I buy it. So if I'm going to a work event or holiday, or I'm not very good at grandma's house yet, you know, because you go to grandma's house and you gain the pounds that you lose during the week. It's just, darn it. I write on the Post-it note, I'll write something to myself like, yo, you know, what about that 5 pounds you lost? Or, you know, or just a sticky or a note and put it places. Either put it in your suitcase, put it in your work notebook, put it in your wallet, put it in your car, just to remind you, hey, just be a little bit more mindful.
Well, and it's easy to forget when you're in the moment of eating grandma's cookies. So those little reminders are nice because they're just little refreshers of, oh yeah, now I remember maybe why I didn't want that. Because sometimes you have that moment of, I do want this. Why would I not eat this? So yeah. And then kind of also along those lines is if you are at an event or dealing with holidays or whatever it is, make a commitment to yourself to keep food tracking, or even if you're just tracking for that particular event. Doesn't mean you can't do what you want to do, but if you make the commitment to write it down, it will change your behavior.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we are by no means saying to not have fun and not enjoy yourself. But there's a middle of the road that you can be happy with to get back home, still feel good, not be bloated and not be constipated and not be this and not be that, and then be ready to roll. There's a happy medium there if, you know, just kind of halfway stick with your goals. And, you know, I'm feeling good and stuff like that. So, okay, cool.
Yeah. For sure. So those all take a little bit of strategizing, some planning, but what do we do while you are actually at the event, right? So one of the things that's helpful for people, and you can't always do this, but if the option's available, wait for all the food to be on the table before you start serving yourself. They say if you're making all your choices at once, you'll eat around, what's an odd number they came up with, 14% less. So, you know, and the other thing, of course, is when you're filling up your plate, round one should always be the healthiest stuff. Your nutrient-dense, fiber-filled foods.
Right, absolutely. If you're at a restaurant restaurants are becoming pretty easy now to make the healthier choices. So, you know, you can ask for the hamburger without the bun.
Yeah.
You know, don't do this if people are going to stare at you and whatever, I guess, maybe. I don't know. Depends on how you want to handle it. There's always good choices to make. So maybe, you know, make it a decision. Do you want the fries or do you want the overcooked vegetables? Or, but these choices matter. These choices really matter. Don't go into it. And a lot of us are all or nothing. I mean, we're type A. Most of us, we are. So don't go into these things thinking, hey, I can't eat perfect, so I'm just going to eat like trash. Find the middle ground.
You know, don't you think that goes back to our very beginning thing from the get-go? We know we're going to fall off the wagon. It's just how quickly do you get back on? How hard are you going to be on yourself? Just make the best decisions you can. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the reasons why, you know, January 1st rolls around, because we've gone through Thanksgiving and the holidays. Well, I guess it starts at, you know, Halloween, right? The eating and the drinking start pretty heavy, and most of our family really aren't. I know for myself that most of the people that I'm around don't understand, like yesterday, I was at grandma's house, I ate pretty good, and then the pizza arrived, right? And I'm trying not to eat any bread and whatnot. And I'm walking around, and how many people asked me if I was going to have pizza? I think, I don't know, 7.
Right. Yeah.
And I had just shoveled in a whole bunch of chicken and noodles. I mean, you can't pass up grandma's chicken and noodles, but you can try to pass up the pizza. And so I'm walking in the kitchen and I'm looking at it and I'm just chanting to myself, "You're not eating the pizza. You're not eating the pizza." And so it became a thing. And then after a while, I ended up eating a piece of pizza, but just one. And it was a small piece. It was the thing that was left over, but it's okay. And I did the best that I could. It wasn't like I ate a whole bunch of pizza. I kind of waited. I did the best that I could. And then I caved a little bit, but
hey, and the damage was minimal, right? It was one piece. It could have been half a pizza, sometimes in how you look at it.
For real, right?
Yeah. So some other strategies, obviously not just grandma's house, but any event while we're there, right? One of the best things you can do is the whole idea of mindfulness, which I know you as a yoga instructor, that's like a large part of kind of what you do. But one thing I think that's really helpful for people is if they can sit and eat and savor their food and not stand. One year when we were prepping for Thanksgiving, my sister and I were cooking and doing all kinds of things. And I started thinking, you know what? Normally I would eat this, because as you're cooking, you kind of tend to graze. I thought, I'm going to just do a little experiment. I'm going to set this plate aside and everything I would normally graze, I'm going to just put it on a plate. I was kind of like, how much will that end up being at the end? Like a little, a lot? I never got to find out because my sister ate everything on the plate. So, but she was not being mindful. You know what I'm saying? She was just working and eating and there it was. So, sitting and eating, that's good. Putting your fork down between bites. So that gives you time to chew. And that also, it gives our body time to process, right? So there's a whole scientific reason behind this, the way our hormones work. So things have to get in the stomach and then they have to start releasing into your small intestine, and that cholecystokinin or CKK and leptin, they have a chance to start working. So if you're putting your fork down, chewing, giving time for things to move through, then you're going to get those, satiated,
right?
Hunger, or hunger, gosh, I can't talk. Satiated signals. So you're not going to want to keep eating.
Absolutely. And really sitting at a meal can be social. And I always use the meal as an opportunity to look at people and ask questions. So I'm always kind of like trying to, start conversations and stuff like that. And that really helps me with putting my food down. And one thing that I struggle with a little bit is I think that some of the time as serious athletes or whoever, right, we tend to put more food on our plate than what we want or should or intend to, because it all looks really good. So one thing that you can do is be mindful on putting smaller, just like sample. Think to your mind, okay, I'm going to sample this, I'm going to sample that, and I'm going to sample that. But, and then putting your fork down. And then once you find out, hey, I'm full, like I'm pleasantly full. Or if you found out that, oh, I'm full, but you still have food on your plate, you need to maybe try to figure out how to be okay with not eating the rest of the food on your plate. I'm pretty lucky in that my counterpart who goes with me to most of these things, he's a lot bigger than me, so he tends to eat my food for me.
Oh, that's nice. See, I tend to eat all my husband's food.
Right? But be okay with not finishing your food necessarily, but maybe on the front side of it, just take smaller portions, because usually you can always go back and get some more. That is so true. You can take smaller portions. If you have it, use smaller plates. If you have food left on your plate, I know for me, I have to cover it with a napkin. Otherwise, I'm going to eat it. But if it's kind of out of sight, it's a little bit out of mind. Some people, it's good to have that visual, the leftovers, so they know they're done. For others, you need to not see it. Just depends. Right. I usually, and some of the time what I do is if it's really good, I will actually kind of talk about this extra leftover and ask for a to-go box quicker than what I would have to get it in the box and get it closed up. And I think, dude, that's going to make an awesome lunch. Right.
Yes.
So that's another thing to do with kind of this idea, or, you know, if you're at a family gathering or whatnot, you know, take a leftover somewhere. Ask if you can take the leftover. Or some of the time what I do, like in my own house, if I'm full, I will just set it over there on the counter or stick it in the refrigerator, and I'll eat it a little bit later.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like sometimes we just need to relax and say, oh, I'm full. I
Right.
can eat this again. I don't have to eat it right now. Doesn't all need to be shoveled in at the same time. Yeah. So some other things maybe we should think about: cocktails. That's something people deal with a lot at events. Sticking to certain types of cocktails is helpful. Also, always doing a 1-to-1 ratio, 1 cocktail, 1 water. That's important.
So when you say sticking to a certain cocktail, what do you mean?
Well, and I think we've talked about this before, maybe not in this program, but that means let's not do the dark beer or
Hey, hold on a second. What?
no, or one dark beer, or, you know, have a strategy before you go into it.
Dark beer is very calorie dense.
Yeah. And those alcohol calories, unfortunately, they have to get metabolized before everything else does. So they're not our friend.
So what, in your training and stuff like that, what are better alcoholic beverages to order or have?
Yeah, and the key word here is better. I mean, if you're not going to have any, that's best. If you're going to do something, you know, I like a vodka with a club soda, or something that just you keep very light. So, you know, maybe a flavored vodka with a flavored club soda, but calorie light.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, what else cover you?
Oh, well, what about food pushers? Do you have any of those in your family?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Even when you're not hungry, you're full, you couldn't eat another bite, you must take it, or you must try this, or I think every family has at least one, right? So
Or 10. We have 10. 10, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and if you have a lot of cooks in your family, there tend to be more food pushers.
Right.
They want you to sample what they made, and that's understandable. So if you deal with that, one of the best things you can do, because if you just tell them no, we all understand feelings get hurt, people get upset, but you also don't want to be eating just everything in sight. So the strategy is 3 bites. Whatever they want you to try, 3 bites. So the first bite we know is going to be the best. The last bite's kind of your grand finale. And then everything else in between is kind of the same. So if you can just manage it with 3 bites, then, and of course, subtly,
Right.
as long as they're not asking you to eat the whole plate. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then you had a really good point about being picky with your
Indulgences. Yeah, it's okay. I couldn't say the word satiety earlier, so it's okay.
Oh my gosh. But anyway, you know, just looking around, just being mindful and saying, okay, you know, I don't need everything. I mean, but
Right.
if looking at the dessert layout, it's kind of hard to do. So pick 1 or 2 of your favorites. And what I do in my mind is I can pick more of them if I make the portions smaller. So sometimes I'll come away from the dessert table and I'll have like 3 or 4 samples, just 1 bites of each thing. And it ends up being maybe the same or a little bit less than just 1 serving of a dessert.
Well, it's either that kind of goes back to the whole 3 bites thing. You're just doing the first bite of everything.
Right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So the other thing I felt like we should maybe talk about is just general, like, things that we deal with in the workday and just good general practices for dealing with kind of food issues. And the first one that I thought of, and it kind of goes back to food pushers a little bit, but, you know, there's always, you know, there's donuts in the break room, there's pizza in the kitchen at grandma's. There's always these things that are tempting you. And so if you're really just dying for that, whatever it is, one of the strategies I learned a couple years ago is called ride the wave. So you are not denying yourself. You're saying, fine, I can have that. The thing is I have to go find something else to do for the next 20 minutes. Usually it's get involved in a project, read a book, do something that will occupy your mind. What happens most of the time is you completely forget about that food that you were thinking you so desperately needed, and you get involved in your project. But if in 20 minutes you still want it and you're still thinking about it, then go ahead and let yourself have it.
That's excellent idea. Awesome.
Yeah, I have found it's really, and you know what happens? You end up being really productive.
Now, if you're legitimately hungry,
that's different. Yeah.
Try to find something good to eat and, have a little bit of a snack, handful of nuts, and then, do this activity thing. Okay, awesome.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Hey, you put down here, take treats, but take it home. I do this all the time. Like, Grandma's like, you need to try, I'm sorry, we just came back from Grandma's last night. I'm going to try this lemon cake pie. And so I took just one bite from his, because he's like, hey, here, try this, right? And I'm like, oh, that was delish. But I didn't take the piece that they were offering right then. I said, oh, that would be really good for tomorrow. Can I have it on a plate? Right.
And that's so it saves you, it saves the person that made it. They're happy that you can enjoy it at some point. Usually if I do that and I bring it home, I'm going to share it. So I'm not eating the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that because I set it on the counter. I nibbled on it and he says, if that stays on the counter, I'm eating it.
That's how it works.
I know, right? If you want to do this kind of grazing on your dessert, you need to put clear sign that I'm not allowed to eat it or I'm going to eat it. Perfect.
Nothing is safe in my house.
Oh, yeah, I know, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Healthy snacks. We already talked about that.
You covered that great. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Keep goodies out of view. Super duper important. If you're even slightly hungry or just have this hungry tick or food tick.
Or you're not even hungry and you see it, you get triggered, right?
Right. Okay. Let's go through this wonderful list of general good practices. Just overall wrapping all this up.
Yeah. So just in general, to help you deal with all the temptations and all the, getting your routine thrown off. Good general practice, getting enough sleep. We know if we don't get enough quality sleep, that is going to affect our hunger and hormones, ghrelin, leptin, the ones that keep us hungry, make us feel full. So our body can overproduce those hormones without enough sleep. The other thing is, I know I've read some studies where people that get less than 6 hours of sleep have glucose and insulin levels like similar to those of diabetics. So that's, it tells us sleep is foundational to good health.
Absolutely. Eat a good breakfast. Eating a good breakfast is probably by far the best thing that you can do for yourself. If you don't hear anything else, sleep and eat a good breakfast with your macros balanced out. Not all carbs, not all sugary stuff. You need to have a good healthy dose of protein and fat in there too. Breakfast is excellent.
Yes, for sure. So yes, sleep, a good breakfast. And then one of the other things, if it's available to you, depending on where you live and the weather and all that, is if you can walk after a meal. And I know some people maybe run. I don't know. I don't like to do anything that's too heavy after a meal, but that just helps clear the glucose out of your bloodstream. So there's a lot of studies. And if you ever need some good nighttime reading about how walking after a meal is really good for your digestive health.
Right. Absolutely. The last thing that I wanted to touch on is traveling, work trips, whatever it is, busy time, a bunch of school events all smacked together. Try to keep up with your routines. The supplements that you're taking, if you're taking magnesium regularly, try not to forget it when you go on a trip. These things have a large effect. Try to keep up with these everyday routines that you have. I know that I have, certain things that I really need to do every day. And sometimes we forget. Put those higher on the priority list of making sure that you stick with those. Breakfast is probably one of them too that I would put into this. Don't screw that one up. Make sure that you're doing that one on point.
Yeah, definitely. I think you nailed it. It's try to have a routine and then try to stick to it as much as you possibly can.
Right. Absolutely. So anything else last you want to say about managing busy time, stress stuff, event, holiday?
Other than just, I want people to know you don't have to be perfect. If you put that kind of pressure on yourself, then you are going to feel like you have failed. And then that's when people throw in the towel. So progress, not perfection. And you guys can do it.
Absolutely. Good deal. Well, hope that helps you guys. Let us know what you think about that or if you have any questions. And have a good day.
Awesome. Ciao.